Good day, I'm Administrator Adam Southgate, and today's lecture will be covering the Abomination sphere's Epa Gwaed. I'll begin today with a question. Can an animal truly be cruel? Now your first response may be simply, of course, but doesn't cruelty require intention? Animals have been observed doing some rather vicious things, but there is no malice behind their actions, as they cannot even conceive of the idea that other beings can suffer. We ourselves even struggle with this idea at times, so what chance does, say, a squirrel have? But what about those beings closer to our level of intellect, though not quite tipping the scale? Can they be cruel? This is what today's entity confronts us with, but before I get ahead of myself, I'd like to mention the Order's Discord to help keep our hunters organized. It's broken up into different roles based on rank and which Earth you belong to, if any. Along with this, we conduct our contracts through this system, so I hope to see you all there. Now, on to our hunters update. Firstly, I recently conducted a new interview with Epa Gwaed. Mostly, it was simple bookkeeping, establishing a psychological profile and the like. However, some interesting subjects did come up during it. I'm going to play for you a recorded snippet of said interview now. So, how are the mixed memories of your true parent being settling, for lack of a better term?
At first, it was clearer, but as time has passed, and I form memories of my own, those of my father's are becoming shrouded, still there, but inaccessible.
That must be alarming for you, but why do you think this is happening, if you don't mind me asking?
I believe that this is a natural extension of becoming my own person. As I form my own thoughts, those of my progenitors are stored away, so that I know which are mine.
Interesting. So about...
Before we continue, I have been poring through both the history of the spheres and that of man, and I have noticed a rather strange quirk within man. You appear to be obsessed with that is above, launching metal from the bounds of the world. Why?
Wow, your memory really has changed rather a bit. Well, it's to explore. That metal is machines that can send us pictures and data of what is out there. But we've also sent people up there too.
Humanity is truly capable of great wonders. But what of those sent above? Have any since returned?
Yes, most of them. There's always a risk, but we do all we can to mitigate the dangers. If you'd like, I can have a projector brought in, and you can see our world from space yourself.
Such a thing is possible. I would be most pleased.
We estimate that Epa Gwaed has lost up to 70% of his parents' memories by this point, and there is no sign of this trend slowing down. As he himself surmises, we believe that this was always going to happen, the parents' memories acting as a scaffold, while he built up his own authentic personality. Now that he is becoming more fully formed, this scaffold is being taken down and stored away. We do not believe that they are permanently lost, only inaccessible, and under the right conditions could be unlocked. Secondly, and rather frustratingly, we've gotten reports of a small cadre of Iron Cult members within a disused factory complex within South Wales. Through coordination with the KSG, we know that these are an English contingent of a smaller chapter of the cult, looking to make a power play by taking control of the Welsh territory. However, this may be an opportunity in disguise. We know that currently the different chapters of the Iron Cult believe that Wales is a vacant lot for any group quick enough to claim. However, if we can convince them that the territory is already claimed, we may be able to buy ourselves some breathing room. To this end, we would like a group of hunters to masquerade as Iron Cult members, convincing these newcomers that they are trespassing upon their territory. You're going to be creating your own fake chapter of the cult, along with a name, dress, and customs of worship, then arrange a meeting with the group. Ideally, you will be able to convince them to leave with minimal casualties so that they will be able to tell other would-be interlopers that Wales is already claimed. However, failing this, wiping out the group, while not ideal, would be acceptable. The Order can provide you with Iron Cult weaponry and other paraphernalia captured after our assault on the Iron Dawn that should make your task somewhat easier. So, you'll need to come up with your own fake Iron Cult chapter as a cover, arrange a meeting with the invading group, and assert your claim upon Wales. As this should be a contract light on actual combat, we are accepting hunters of any rank. However, apprentices must be accompanied by their masters. This contract can be accepted via the Order's Discord, where it will have its own tab under Contracts. The Abomination Sphere is fascinating because despite all its many differences from our own, it is the most like our own, following many of the same physical laws of our universe. To quickly recap, the primary Abomination world that we are breached from is one with high atmospheric pressure and low light, the two being interconnected by a hyper-dense cloud layer blocking out most light from reaching the surface. The animal life from this sphere all originates from a single recent ancestor, at least recent by evolutionary terms. We believe that a cataclysm hit their world, causing the current conditions and wiping out 99.9% of all life, causing an incredibly tight evolutionary bottleneck. Somewhere on this world, either a single or small group of a single species of animal survived. This being, in times of crisis, was able to reproduce asexually, but typically reproduced sexually. With it being the only surviving member of its species or one of a small familial group, it began to reproduce asexually. This, for a time, would have meant a slow, grinding extinction, as they had lost the ability to adapt due to a lack of diversity. However, with at least one of these offspring, a very unlikely random mutation changed the game. This being itself would have experienced no difference from its forebears. However, its young would have been born with just enough mutations within the genetic code for evolution to take hold once again. And from then on, each newborn would have its DNA randomized, just enough to avoid stagnation. Over the next tens to hundreds of millions of years, these mutations stacked up, until their world was covered in a similar diversity of animal life as our own, though all based on the original animal that was their more recent common ancestor. Today, Abomination entities can only reproduce asexually, and all share common traits derived from that original being, such as advanced auditory organs and chitinous plates. An Epa Gwaed is a human-sized abomination entity with 4 primary limbs and 2 secondary adapted limbs. Unlike most abomination entities, their chitinous plates are sparse and sporadic for reasons that we will cover shortly. Moving from the bottom to the top, their feet are rounded, with flat bottoms similar to a scaled-down version of that of an elephant's, with their legs themselves being slightly longer than their main body and powered by dense muscles. Their torsos are stocky and packed with strong, fibrous muscle, though interestingly with two exceptions. Within the lower abdomen, there are two slits within the muscle that allow for two manipulator arms to exit the body. This is one of the more interesting aspects of the Epa Gwaed, as these arms are actually their own modified intestines, still performing the same role as is typical of the organ, but also able to leave the body partially as makeshift hands. This is possible due to the level of control the entities have over these organs, to a similar degree as we do with our own tongues, allowing them to create appendages for almost any task. These limbs can then retract back into the body if they are in danger of drying out. Their standard forelimbs are as equally powerful as their legs, though ending in bone spurs that protrude from the skin. These are cone-like growths with a high degree of density, making them excellent clubs, but also with the point at their end a passable stabbing implement. Their heads, like all but the few specialized Abomination entities, lack eyes, instead housing the opening to several auditory organs that give the beings a 360-degree three-dimensional image of their surroundings, through a form of hyper-advanced echolocation. Instead of individual teeth, the Epa Gwaed have two wraparound plates that grow throughout their lives, with these plates often chipping, creating jagged spikes that can tear flesh. Their jaws are powered by dedicated muscles that give them a devastating bite force on a similar level to our world's hyenas. Now, to explain their chitin, the Epa Gwaed are one of the few rare examples of Abomination entities that do not produce their own chitin. They still possess all the needed organs to do so, though most are now vestigial, though the root follicles that grow into the chitin to anchor it in place is still very much present. You see, the Epa Gwaed take the chitin of deceased Abomination entities and add it to themselves. This process takes weeks to complete, and each individual plate must be held in place while the root follicles grow into the dead chitin, fusing it to the body and bringing it back to some semblance of life. You'd think that this would be a disadvantage, leaving them vulnerable while it fuses. However, Epa Gwaed do not act alone. Living in groups of between 13 to 19, they utilize impressive group tactics to take down their prey, typically surrounding what they intend to take down, be it Abomination entity, mundane cattle, or humans. Once done, two will charge towards the prey from opposite sides, the one the prey turns towards, feinting an attack and retreating to safety, while the other moves in to strike, stabbing into the target with a shard of crafted chitin. This will rarely do enough damage to bring down their quarry, but will make it bleed. This will continue for hours until, through exhaustion and blood loss, their prey collapses to the ground. This alone is horrifying and an awful way to go, however is made worse and far more worrying by the fact that the Epa Gwaed will rarely attack their prey with their forelimbs, instead using their modified intestines that will be holding, as stated, a primitive tool. Now, I don't want to overstate this, as it's not like the Epa Gwaed are making spears. However, they will take pieces of collected chitin and shape them into primitive hand axes and use these to both attack and butcher their prey. They also show other signs of intelligence. Removing chitin from a freshly killed entity is exhausting work, as any hunter will tell you. However, the Epa Gwaed have found a way around this issue, burying the bodies to rot enough to easily remove the chitin. It goes beyond even this, however, as if left to rot for too long, the chitin will be too degraded to attach to their own bodies. But with their robust digestive system, they can eat meat that has long since rotted to the point of extreme danger to most animals. This has led to them burying different kills for different purposes, as it seems they prefer the far more rotten meat for consumption. So within their territory, they will have designated places for kills intended for chitin and kills intended for meat. This extends to what they kill within our own sphere, burying their kills to rot before consuming them. But again, refocusing on the attachment of new plates, how do they do this while still remaining effective? Well, to explain that, we need to look at their social structure. A collection of Epa Gwaed, also known as a troop, is a highly structured social hierarchy focusing on the oldest member. To begin, a single Epa Gwaed, either breaching into our sphere or having left its old troop, will give birth to what is known as a secondary. This is the only time when the leader of the troop, or the primary, will give birth to a single individual, the rest of its young being born in groups of 2s to 3s. This secondary will be larger than all the other young born, and will be responsible for keeping the others in the troop in line, while also watching the primary and learning from them. Within the troop, only the primary will be permitted to give birth, with any others being severely punished for doing so, either through execution or exile. This also applies to the secondary. During the primary's reign, they will teach their young how to hunt, bury their kills, and how to craft the primitive tools they use, while giving special attention to their secondary. The primary makes all the decisions for the troop, including who gets what chitin to add to themselves. This displays a rather sophisticated level of planning, as the primary must consider how the troop will hunt while those attaching chitin to themselves are unavailable. Typically, only 1 to 2 members of the troop will be permitted to do this at a time, so that the rest of the troop is available to both defend and hunt, but also the primary will ensure that these indisposed members are fed and cared for throughout. At some point when the secondary is ready, and the main reason they have aided in putting down any hint of rebellion from the others, they will challenge the primary. This is a rather interesting process, as, for the primary, their life is on the line. However, the primary will not kill their own secondary, at most banishing them from the troop to start their own while they give birth to a new secondary. If the secondary is successful and able to kill the primary, they will become the new primary, immediately beginning to gestate their own new secondary. The siblings of the new primary will continue to serve them until eventually passing away, being replaced by the new offspring. All of this displays a complex social structure and is evidence of intelligence, but what tips it over into certainty, apart from their creation and use of tools, is that Epa Gwaed display complex play behavior. Well, yes, they do exhibit the standard play hunting behaviors of many predatory animals. They also exhibit more sadistic play behaviors that serve no function other than entertainment. Most of these are too graphic to go into here, but I will share with you one that has been observed. After a troop within Wales hunted and killed an unfortunate gamekeeper, the troop was witnessed first throwing the man's own intestines into the air, seeming to delight as they hit the ground. And then, after the man's head became severed from the body, they were seen throwing it at each other for hours to no discernible benefit. After some time, rules began to naturally develop, and members of the troop became angered by those who broke these established rules. Through autopsies of Epa Gwaed, we know that their two brains are highly developed, being on a similar level to our own canines. However, this is true of both linked brains. Their auditory and spatial processing appears to be shared between both minds equally, but due to the large size and complexity of these brains, this leaves far more to what is approaching higher thinking. This is the true existential threat of Epa Gwaed. It's not that they are strong or physically dangerous, it's that they are, at least to the level of the great apes, intelligent. But how does one hunt a troop of Epa Gwaed? Well, firstly, and most importantly of all, do not get surrounded. No, really, don't get surrounded. Chances of survival in such a circumstance is within the single-digit range when backup is present. If no support is forthcoming, well, it doesn't bear thinking about. Thankfully, there are some things that give us an advantage. As stated, the recycled Abomination chitin plates are sporadically placed, leaving many areas open for attack. By using both standard ammunition rather than tungsten and a weapon with a higher rate of fire, semi-automatic being the best we can do, it is possible to hit bare skin, causing decent damage. While these rounds will not punch through the chitin, you will not have the heavy recoil to deal with, meaning that you can fire much faster. Focusing your efforts upon the primary and secondary has also proven to be an effective strategy, as it seems that the troop relies on their leadership to act effectively. So, if you are able to observe the troop at range, identify the two targets and take them down before fully engaging, your job should be somewhat easier. Maintaining good mobility is also proven effective when dealing with the Epa Gwaed. They are rather fast despite their build being clocked at around 19 miles per hour, and so using motorized vehicles such as cars or even better an off-road bike will allow you to maintain a good distance. The most important element of hunting Epa Gwaed, however, is to always do so as part of a team. Their entire strategy hinges on them taking down solo targets, overwhelming them from different angles, so if approached from multiple directions, their typical method falls apart. Finally, and this is mostly for the safety of future hunts, do not let any escape. As already explained, the Epa Gwaed are unique as they can pass down knowledge to each other, so if one were to escape after witnessing our combat strategy, it is possible, though admittedly unlikely, that they may be able to adapt, finding a workaround and making them far more dangerous. I find the Epa Gwaed frightening, not for their brutality, but rather because of the implication they represent. If upon the Abomination world, beings can convergently evolve to be similar to our own great apes, then what is there to stop something evolving to be similar to ourselves? Beings just as intelligent as us, but with all the strength, durability, and brutality inherent with that sphere. We only gain snapshots of the spheres based on what breaches into ours. This means that the Abomination sphere could be home to a species of entity just as clever as we are, that is built up just as we have, and is delving into the mysteries of the spheres just as we are. It's existentially horrifying to say the least, but that will be all for today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. With Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom, thank you.